Do you know that this is just the third time that they've ever met as ranked opponents?
Wow.
Would you like to hazard to guess who the coaches were the last time Kentucky and Tennessee met as ranked opponents?
Bear Bryant for Kentucky. And then General Nealon for Tennessee.
Excellent work by you, Peter Thamel.
Wow.
Excellent work by you.
I'm paying some Tennessee taxes this year too. So.
Yeah. This is the quintessential battle of style and pace. There are a couple of things. Tennessee historically has absolutely owned Kentucky. Mark Stoops has had a little bit of success, but overall Tennessee, despite all of its issues, they've won 34 of 37 in this meeting. You have one of the slowest paced teams in the country in Kentucky and one of the fastest in Tennessee. The one thing I wonder about is last year, it was first year. I get it. Tennessee's offensive line is probably even better this year. Kentucky did get a little pressure on Hendon Hooker last year, which was something Alabama was unable to do this year. For Kentucky to have any chance, and I'm not sure that I believe they really do have a chance, but to have any chance, that's what they have to do. I think I've got the number here. They pressured him on 36% of his dropbacks last year. That's the most he's been pressured in any start at Tennessee. And he got sacked 5 times. He went 2 for 5 with averaged about 5 yards per attempt. Now he cut him up when he wasn't pressured, as he has just about everybody else. That's their only chance, is to somehow get them behind the sticks, make a couple of unproductive possessions, and then hog the ball and be able to control the pace and the tempo and maybe hit some shots with Levis, who seems to be getting healthier. But I'm not optimistic about the Wildcats' chances to catch the balls in a look-ahead game looking ahead to Georgia.
It's interesting, Rece. So to tease a digital story I'll be doing next week, I've been talking to coaches for the past 4 or 5 days to kind of, these anonymous breakdown stories where you kind of have guys.
I love those.
Yeah. And this one's been particularly fun because, there were years where it's like, oh, Alabama, they're really good. Their left guard might be a little shaky, but there weren't, you had to really search for vulnerabilities, where I think one of the things that's making this season unfold so fascinating is that everybody's got some vulnerabilities up top, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody's running away with anything this year. And I think that the ceiling that Alabama and Georgia had pushed maybe and nudged away from the sport has come down to, numbers 3 verse 7 or 3 verse 8. I do think there's a beautiful muddle, one to at least 6 at the top of the sport. So I will tease this. Boy, do a lot of coaches think Tennessee can beat Georgia, like way more than I thought. The people who sat in the film room and grinded it out. So I certainly have a lot of respect for Kentucky. And the reason you said is this: the teams that can affect Hooker are going to have the best chance to beat them. Jalen Carter really just hasn't been a factor this year for Georgia. So
he's been hurt a lot.
Yeah, and he had the MCL against Missouri. Kirby's pessimistic about him playing this week. I probably wouldn't expect him to in the cocktail party. Maybe he's back for Tennessee, maybe he isn't. But so it will be interesting to see. That was a dogfight in Lexington last year. Tennessee won by a field goal, 45-42. How much better is Tennessee, on offense, where they could maybe push ahead? There's an expectation that Cedric Tillman comes back, which I think has been amid this glorious run for Tennessee, they have not had their best player. Like, he is their best draft prospect on the offense. And so all of a sudden, again, they should not look past Kentucky, because Kentucky has the war daddies up front who could impact Hooker, and obviously has from the data you gave last year. But boy, is it going to be a fun one. We can dive into that more next week a little bit. But it was surprising, because it was like, Georgia, especially at corner opposite Ringo, people are very skeptical. If there's one thing we saw Helms, the safety from Alabama, just you could feel like viscerally him getting exposed in that game. He knew it. 100,000 people in Neyland Stadium knew it. If there is someone to expose in a secondary, Alex Golish and Josh Heupel have shown they can call the plays and dial it up to figure it out.
And that's the thing, not to go back to that game, but that was the big coaching win. That was the pantsing of the Alabama defensive staff, was that they kept finding him. Really interesting too that led Alabama to put Eli Ricks on the field for the first time. Maybe, there were some practice issues or whatever, but he looked like a dude against Mississippi State.
That's been an interesting case.
Yeah,
that's so been an interesting case.
I would hazard to guess that old number 7 is going to be out there for the rest of the year, barring some unfortunate circumstance. One thing I would
play in the SEC title game, I guarantee you.
Oh yeah, he'll have to be. Alabama's got a couple of big hurdles to get to that SEC title game.
Doubt.
All of their tough games are on the road this year, and they turned the A&M game into a tough one at home. But one thing I'd like to hear, we don't have to dive into it now, but for next week, if you still have some more guys to talk to, pressure on Hooker. Schematically, what did Alabama not do that maybe Georgia will learn from and do to free up some of their pass rushers? Because it never really seemed as if they got, very often anyway, got Turner, Anderson, obviously, Braswell loose to try to say, go get him. And I would be interested to hear that.
Well, I don't think they did much. That was basically generally, they just kind of sat back and hoped Will got home, and then didn't make a ton of adjustments in between to try to change that to affect him. Because for Hooker, and look, he's the Heisman leader. I don't want to knock Hendon Hooker at all, but he is not Drew Brees accuracy. So the thought is, if you can close into him and close the windows, that's the best way to get them behind the chains. To slow them down, you have to get them behind the chains. And so what's interesting, another coach pointed out to me, Rece, in that line, is that if you are Georgia, you are happy they had Alabama first, because your systems are so similar that you can glean from what they did wrong. It's almost like you played them twice, right? You don't have to film it yourself. It's a little bit of exaggeration, but there's enough schematic overlays of what worked and what didn't, where you get to drill down on what worked.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.